We live in the time of internet blood sports, and we live in the time of ephemera. Lots of things are happening. Lots of things are happening very, very fast. And it almost is quite easy to lose track of the things that are important. Here we are covering the Sargon Anglin stream, the debate, the conversation, the talk. And it's something that's vital because it's a direct line from the Richard Spencer Sargon debate. And I'm joined by my friend Will in order to pick over the ruins of the debris of this plane crash. Hello, my friend.
Hello, hello. Always good to be here with you, my friend Adam.
I've isolated a few clips which we can analyze and study in detail as this conversation goes on. So I'll play the first one, and we shall have our thoughts at the end of it.
So I guess my question to start with for Sargon would be, do you grant the moral premise that white people have a right to their own country, and you're just saying that it's impossible to make that happen?
Well, I said at the beginning that I didn't really want to debate the talking points because there's no point. The problem that I have with anything that the alt-right says when it comes to the concept of an ethno-state is that it is trying to strip away the ethnic heritage that I have inherited. Do you understand that?
What I don't understand that. No. Oh, is it the thing that you're a quadroon?
No,
that's not true, Sargon, is it?
It is absolutely true.
I don't think that's true. I saw your parents in a video, Sargon. Come on, just let's announce in this big Alaska stream that that's bullshit.
Andrew,
because I saw your parents. I saw your parents, Sargon. There's no way that's true.
I don't care about your opinion on that. It really doesn't matter.
Now, Anglin here, he asks, do you grant the moral premise that white people have a right to their own countries? And Sargon sidesteps this question by saying he, quote, doesn't want to debate it as a talking point, while at the same time, however, inserting a new topic of contention by stating that somehow the very premise inherently strips away his ethnic heritage as a Brit. You know, here Sargon equates Enlightenment era values with the entire sum of British history and starts laying the groundwork of the intellectual position that he will be operating from during this conversation. It will be a mix of faux British nationalism, tactical anarcho-capitalism, and ultimately what I like to call Strogenous principles, because even Sargon doesn't know where he stands on half of these issues.
He's trying to make himself seem personally slighted. In fact, not just personally slighted, but you're slighting him and his own race when you pose this question of the ethno-state. It's so bizarre that Sargon, even if he were a quadroon, that he'd still identify as black in opposition to these arguments. It shows his lack of integrity, that he will assume a position which, you know, is not entirely different from how an SJW would operate in this context. Sargon makes the wider issue an ad hominem attack on himself, on his person, on his racial identity, when it's not really, because Sargon isn't even black.
No, of course not. Of course. I mean, this should be quite evident. I mean, Sargon is as black as Sean King is at this point. Let us not misunderstand anything here, my friends. But I find it quite ironic, especially because it is Sargon himself who said, many years prior, that offense is never given; it is only taken. But now we see that this little grain of truth has sort of flipped itself upside his head, and he is now arguing from a position of feigned, woundedness, right?
Andrew, listen, right? Look, I thought we'd be able to have an honest conversation because, as far as I'm concerned,
well, I'm being honest.
Stop.
We'll get back to the
stop being defensive and let me speak. Look, I'm not here to attack you. Okay, as far as I'm concerned, you are the only honest person in the entire alt-right. So I actually, of all of the people in the alt-right, respect you the most.
No, I don't want to take anybody's rights away, Sargon.
Of course you do.
Sargon.
Okay,
no,
now,
I don't.
Now I think you're not being honest. Andrew, you've got on your website, you've got race war and the Jewish problem. Come on, don't lie to me.
What I love about this is that Sargon tries to set up this structure where he is at the top and he's deeming who is right and who is wrong. and who he should interact with and who demands respect and who should have respect. And he's deemed Andrew Anglin as the one that demands his attention. Not for any reason. He says it's because he's the most honest person on the alt-right, but seconds later he's talking about how dishonest he is and how much of a liar Anglin is. He does not deep down consider Andrew Anglin the only person worthy of speaking to on the alt-right. He simply sees him as an easy target, a low-hanging fruit which he can be a big-brained gotcha liberalist over. Doesn't work, but it's the tactic that Sargon's gone into this interview with.
Indeed, and a tactic is really the right word for it, my friend, because Sargon starts his line of attack in a two-pronged way. Because first off, he accuses Anglin of being defensive, whilst simultaneously lauding him for his supposed honesty, and that he is interested in nothing but an honest conversation. Sargon here attributes a supposedly virtuous quality to his opponent, and yet at the same time asks him to meet the standard of being privileged with such a quality. I've called you honest, so please go along with me as I frame this narrative, or I will accuse you of being dishonest. Which is, of course, exactly what happens when Anglin, professes that he doesn't advocate for the arbitrary infringement of anyone's rights. You're quite right when you say that he sort of frames his narrative as he goes along, and it's quite, well, the only word I can really use for it at this point is disingenuous, right? It is the very definition of not arguing in good faith. And it's quite sad, because Sargon, well, he isn't better than this, not at the moment, but he should be.
I'm genuinely disappointed, Andrew. Fuck.
Yeah, I know. You wanted me to say some crazy shit so you can play it.
Well, you
like
say crazy shit every day on your website. Andrew, listen, right? Is it right for the government to shoot lawful property owners?
Okay, we're not going to shoot anybody.
That's what it's going to come. Yeah, you are. This is why
we can tase them. Most of these people don't even own any property. They live in Section 8 housing.
Don't tase me, bro.
We're going to tase these bros. We're going to tase these bros.
Tasing bros. Nationalism.
Look,
now.
we can use knockout gas. I mean, we can do all kinds. We can use guns that shoot nets.
Gatling gun.
Tranquilizer darts.
That doesn't change the morality of this. Is it moral for the government to say, yeah, we're going to protect your right to come to our country and then buy property, become citizens, and then we're going to take that away? Is that moral?
You would accept? Is that moral? What is immoral is having our right to exist taken away from us. Okay.
So Sargon here is trying to bait Anglin quite transparently. He's trying to lure Anglin into lots of these little gotcha scenarios where he can appear to be this moral arbiter, because that's what Sargon's trying to attempt to be here. And Anglin's quite rightfully identified Sargon's tactic. He's quite rightfully identified that and says, I'm not going to play this game. I'm not going to play the game that you've rigged. So Anglin takes a different tack, and therefore Sargon has to really go further and further and further. And he tries to assign Anglin positions which he can go, gotcha, that's really insane, that's awful.
I mean, this is all sort of presupposed upon what Sargon did earlier, as we've addressed, but Anglin, you're so honest, right? He attributes what anyone would call a positive quality, a virtuous future to Anglin's character, and then sort of tries to hamstring him up to a standard he's invented 2 seconds prior, right? Anglin, you are honest, so certainly if you're not going to, and I'm okay, Anglin, you are honest. I'm going to put words in your mouth now, and if you don't agree with any of these presupposed and sort of weird neo-Nazi genocidal practices, then I'm going to frame you as suddenly being dishonest, as having betrayed my trust and my character assessment of you. It's an incredibly disingenuous thing to do, I believe. But even more so, I think, is that Sargon asks the query, which I find quite laughable in itself. Is it right for the government to shoot lawful property owners? Because that's what it's going to come down to. Here we enter as I framed it previously, the tactical anarcho-capitalist realm of absolute nonsense. Nonsense conjured up through the simple process of taking any state action, coupled with civil disobedience, to a logical extreme. Because according to this line of reasoning, my friends, everyone who ever runs a red light or speeds a few miles over the speed limit will need to get violently shot.
Listen, every person has a right to exist.
Sargon, have you even read Heidegger?
I haven't. 'Cause he said that every
Yeah,
person hasn't got a right to exist.
Well, what he said is that human existence has a deeper meaning than this mathematical equation that you've presented as the meaning of existence, that we should base our morality off of a mathematical equation as to who is going to suffer. And I think that's
Was he
that's an underlying philosophical difference.
Have you even read
Was
he
Siege,
Jewish?
Sargon?
That's the
Have you
question.
read Siege, Sargon?
Do you mind not interrupting, man?
Have you
Thanks.
read Siege?
Do you mind not interrupting? Is that okay? Yeah, I'm trying to have a conversation with Andrew.
All right.
So,
I just find his rudeness here when he's interacting with the host, Baked Alaska, of this stream. Just his rudeness to his host. I find that upsetting, really. It's not a very English way of going about things, but it also shows it's a real window into how rustled Sargon's feathers are during this exchange. He keeps trying to talk about, was he Jewish? Was he Jewish? As though he can get a gotcha in. But they're not entertaining this.
It's quite ironic, really, when you consider that. I mean, this is the man who once called people, well, let's say, white Negroids because they were not acting. Do you think white people act like this? We're supposed to be polite. Well, it doesn't seem like he puts that little principle of his into practice when it doesn't suit him. But of course, we've already discussed him being disingenuous, so in a way, we certainly shouldn't be surprised here. But I just want to touch upon real quick Sargon's line, right? Again, another classic little thing that is just hilarious in and of itself. Every person has a right to exist, which is a truism, an irrelevant truism at that, which is therefore quickly countered by a mentioning of Heidegger. A two-pronged attack again, but this time from Anglin. Because firstly, it shifts the subject of discussion from liberal truisms to a discussion of philosophy. But more importantly, does it illustrate to Sargon that Anglin isn't necessarily the, Hollywood skinhead caricature that he's been set up to be. And that, yes, he is more than happy to discuss the philosophical nuances at play when the supposedly inalienable nature of the individual right is brought up by Sargon.
Was he a German, I take it?
He was German, yes.
Yeah. There's a reason as an Anglo I don't listen to the Germans.
Yeah, no, I think that's kind of, I mean, we could go into that, but
how many times do the Germans have to ruin Europe before we stop listening to their ideas? Just out of interest.
Well, how many rape gangs do we have to have in Britain
Sounds like
before we stop listening to the British?
German ideas are terrible.
So no, I mean, I think that we have to kind of go back to
we were fighting the Germans because of their ideas long before Muslim rape gangs appeared. Just so you know.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think Germans have some pretty good ideas, but
that's the problem.
What you're arguing is specifically British.
Yeah,
this empiricism and this mathematical way to look at human beings.
That founded your nation. Yeah, the Anglosphere. Why you speak English? Sitting there and saying, you know what, we should adopt German ideas is a bad idea for an Anglo country.
That's not really.
Sargon, at the mention of Heidegger's name, he sort of tried to get a gotcha by asking if he was Jewish, which he isn't. And so when he reframed it, probably with a quick Google, help from Wikipedia, and asked if he was German, and indeed the answer comes in the affirmative, Sargon treats it as a proverbial, get out of debate free card by chuckling to himself about he, as a British nationalist, of course, doesn't listen to those gosh darn awful Germans. I mean, after all, we've had 2 world wars against them, don't you know? As a Brit, you must know that I hate Germans. Don't you all agree? Which, of course, has nothing to do with the entire debate. I mean, Anglin brings up a philosopher who is incidentally German, perhaps, sure. And Sargon treats that as essentially just an admission of bias and sort of goes into full Anglo mode. This is what I mean with Scrogenous principles. He's a libertarian when it suits him. He's a classical liberal when it suits him. He's a British nationalist when it suits him. He's a nihilist when it suits him.
I find when Sargon is attempting to discredit someone's opinion simply because of their nationality, I find that to be sort of everything that he's attempting to argue against, isn't he? Earlier on, he said that, you want to dismiss people like me, quadroons like me, yet he's perfectly willing to let Germany and the German peoples fall by the wayside.
You're right, of course, because it is quite telling that even later in the debate he asks, "Oh, so as a nationalist, would you prefer living to a Spanish neighbor or Somalian? To me, it's all the same." Again, he is.
Except if it's a German.
You are on my channel.
Are you guys
Show some respect, buddy. If I was on your channel, I would give you respect. All right, so you're on my show.
Were you not just laughing and interrupting me a second ago?
I'm the moderator. I can do whatever I want.
Yeah,
it's
which
my
means
show.
you shouldn't do that. You should show.
No, I can do my show however I
but
want.
That's not showing respect, is it?
So Sargon's been called out on his rudeness to Baked Alaska, and he's trying to get Baked Alaska to play his game also. Everyone must conduct themselves to Sargon's standard of how he thinks they should act, they should behave. And Sargon's standard of how they should behave is simply to show deference to the stepfather.
Yes, indeed. Because, well, you've said it just as a stepfather, right? That meme has never been more true than now. Because in every meme is a tiny grain of truth. And, I mean, what is he doing here? You know, literally sort of demanding that you kneel down and, you know, sort of kiss the ring on his finger, right? That you have to show respect and all that. You know, do you know who you're talking to? I'm your stepfather, right? You know, the great stepfather of Swindon, you know, coming to town, you know, you need to show some deference, you need to bow your head. It's just ridiculous. I mean, doubly so indeed, because he's went on Baked Alaska, who is, well, truth be told, he's not a very good moderator, although he does try, sure. He has the passion for it, perhaps not the aptitude. But the point being is that he knows what he's getting into, right? He went to Anglin, right? Not the other way around. He went to Baked, not the other way around. He shows up late. He has been acting rude, not just to Anglin, not just to the chat, right? Or, you know, but just in general. I mean, Anglin has never even said anything about the Jews, but here Sargon goes off saying that the Germans are worse than niggers, right? That, you know, he doesn't listen to them and this and that, and fuck the Germans. There's also a nice quote in there. I believe it's around the 20 or so minute mark. But the point is that, you know, asking for some due deference, asking for some civility, ironically enough, the very same thing that Sargon asked for when he was on the stream with Michelle, I believe, right? He wanted to be treated with respect as a person. Well, Sargon, the Germans, they're persons too, okay? An entire collection of people, of persons, of white men who should be treated in a polite fashion, sort of turning your own words back on you.
Sargon, you are a laughingstock of the internet right now because
I
you
don't
are intellectually dishonest. It's not the alt-right, it's the whole internet. I was a fan of you, Sargon. I was a big fan of you. I was a big fan of you.
Anything.
You need to get off your high horse, Sargon. I want you to succeed.
To anything that I'm saying, you don't understand what I'm trying to
You
put.
need to stop having this smug attitude about everything. We want to like you. We want to engage with you.
I don't care if you like
you
me.
don't care. I'm not talking about me. I'm speaking for the entire internet. This is what the entire internet thinks.
I'm sure that you are the voice of the entire internet.
I am the voice of the internet.
Baked shows tremendous frustration in a moment of true honesty here and passion at Sargon's ever-increasing arrogance. Now what we see is someone just constantly teetering on the brink of tears, right? He has a certain whimper to his voice, a certain cadence, like he's about to burst out into tears or rage. He's constantly accusing people, which really gets to me, by the way, that they don't understand him, right? Oh, but you're just not understanding what I'm trying to put forward here. He did this with Spencer, with Alternative Hypothesis, with Baked Alaska, with Andy Wolski, with JF. No one in the world, as far as we've seen, is able to understand Sargon's arguments, which I find quite hard to believe. At the end of the day, there are a lot of people, right, who Sargon has sort of excommunicated, who Sargon has sort of written off as the quote-unquote opposition. But these people were his former compatriots, right? They were his friends, they were his subscribers, they were his fans, at the very least fans.
I love Baked Alaska's appeal to Sargon's past. He's trying to say to Sargon that, look, I used to be a fan of you. So many of these people who are criticizing you now used to be a fan of you, yet they've evolved. Their viewpoints have evolved. They've become alt-right. They've taken what Sargon introduced them to and formed their own thoughts and ideas and realized, taken it to the next level, basically, and realized that Sargon's a bit of a dinosaur, a bit of a relic. And I think they were willing to have him come on board and evolve with them. Sargon recognizes this. Sargon recognizes his own position as a dinosaur, as a relic, especially during this internet blood sports e-drama that's going on at the moment. But he recognizes his fossil-like nature. And instead of going, I'm willing to change, I'm happy to adapt, I'm happy to follow my audience over, or follow what used to be my audience over to the other side, to the greener grass. Instead, he stubbornly, like a child, like a baby, like throwing his rattle out of the pram, he refuses to accept or show any humility.
Yeah, you did drop out of Andy Worski's debate, and then
when did we arrange a debate? When did we arrange a debate?
Oh, so you're not doing a debate with Worski?
Well, no. Tell me when I arranged a debate from. I never arranged anything with Andy Worski. I never arranged a time.
I literally, Andy. Okay.
Look, I know that you think I did, but I will send you my correspondence with Andy. I don't know why he's lied about it.
No, Andy showed his email with you, and you said, sure, we'll do it soon. You confirmed that you were doing a debate with him.
Soon? Well, there is no time, there is no date. I haven't set anything.
It's all semantics with Sargon, isn't it? All semantics. He says initially that Worski was lying. I don't know why he's lying about this. Yeah, and then when called out almost instantly on his bullshit, he will say, I said soon. I didn't arrange anything. I said soon.
I'm not sure why Andy is lying about this. How could he? I'm just an innocent. I just said I will have a debate with you soon. But because he did not specify a time, like exact time and date, right down to the minute, it's not a correspondence essentially, right? There's been nothing in transaction there. There's been nothing that's been communicated. Essentially, right? It's not even an indication. No, it's indicative of nothing besides of the fact that Andy is just making it all up. It's quite telling that he gives up the angle about Andy supposedly lying quite quickly, because Baked has the quick wit necessary to just frankly pull Andy into the stream, right? He's like, oh, Andy is lying? Sure, let's get him in here. And then he does join, and for a few minutes they have a little back and forth there, which is again about the same sort of semantic prattle, like, oh, I didn't promise, there's been no time stipulated, there's been no handshake deal, there's been no contract, until Andy suddenly says, okay, fine, I'll just show I'll just screen share my Skype. And then Sargon says, oh, I don't really care. Why are you even here? I don't really care, to be honest. And then later on, he derides Baked Alaska for bringing in people to an otherwise civil debate.
And we're going to play that clip where Worski drops into the stream right now.
Where is it? Yo, Sargon, people are asking when you're down for the Spencer rematch. Fairly soon, man. I've been busy. This clearly indicates that you were down to have the debate. You did say that you would do the debate. Yeah. All right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my point.
But when? That was 10 days ago, Andy.
Yet again, semantics. What is white? All of these little get-outs that Sargon's devised, and they'd work against other people, and they've worked against SJWs he's debated in the past, but they don't work against people who can see through his bullshit. People who are familiar with Sargon's tactics because they're fans of him or used to be fans of him. The fact that Andy Worski was so readily available to hop into this stream and clear his name, I think people knew that Sargon was going to say this. People knew that Sargon was going to try and get out of this and say, because don't forget, he starts off so belligerently saying that, I don't know why he's lying about this. And then he accepts the fact that he's not lying. He goes, yes. And then Worski follows that line and goes, yes, well, you confirmed this, yes? And he goes, soon. That was 10 days ago. It's not confirmation. Of course it's confirmation.
Yes, indeed. He sort of changes the frame from, no, it's entirely unfounded and it's a lie, which is quite a serious accusation, compared to, I've said fairly soon, but that's not indicative of any time particularly, so you can't hold me to that. Oh, fairly soon, well, it was 10 days ago. It may well be whenever it suits my time frame, which is actually what he says on later. So there has been a correspondence. And there has been at least some talk, and at least some, there has been an agreement. We can infer this from the fact that Andy asked, when do you want to do the debate? And Sargon says, fairly soon. You don't need to be an English major to imply that fairly soon is an answer indicative of the fact that he agrees to have a debate in principle to begin with. The correct reply would have been, if he really didn't want to engage with Spencer, no, fuck off Andy, something along those lines. Which obviously, I mean, it's sure it's a bit hyperbolic, but you see the point I'm making, don't you? Extreme backpedaling, and I don't even think, well, frankly, at this point, if even Sargon is aware of what he's doing here. Is this pride, or is it simply his self-ignorance?
And also, Sargon, you only agreed to debate me because you thought I was going to come on here and say I was going to kill a bunch of people.
You've already said that, Andrew.
I have not said I'm going to kill a bunch of people, Sargon. You thought that I was going to go on some crazy thing. Like,
philosophy necessitates violence. Yeah, but like
everything necessitates violence. Integration necessitated violence. They put guns at the backs of little kids to integrate them with the blacks.
Then stop being a fucking pussy about saying that your solution needs violence.
Sargon, that's not a good. That's not like a gotcha. I've said
I didn't say it was a fucking
force,
gotcha.
But the violence,
Andrew,
is up to
listen,
the people.
Andrew, right? As far as I'm concerned, you are a Nazi. There's no point trying to gotcha on a Nazi. Now I'm actually impressed that you actually pretend not to be a Nazi. I never thought that you would ever say that.
I do not pretend not to be a Nazi or to be a Nazi. I don't know what that means. Okay, I do not know what that means.
Well, I'm not interested
use that term
in
Nazi.
Okay,
it's a slur. It's a slur.
Can I quickly finish my conversation with Andy, and then I'll get back to it? No, it's it's not just a slur.
I'm digging this debate in a debate about debating. This
yeah, it is pretty ridiculous. But look, it's a slur when the far left use the term Nazi because A, they don't know anything about Nazis and they don't know anything about the person they're talking about, and they think it's a way of just dismissing them as a bad person, right? It's not a slur when you can actually refer to the points of principle under which Nazis self-identified.
But you're just talking about white nationalism, which goes back to the entire history of Europe. I mean, when they kept these people out of Europe,
I'm not just talking about that.
Were the founding fathers Nazis? Okay.
No. Listen, there's a reason that we're not white nationalists now. But anyway.
Sargon can call Anglin a Nazi because he's the only one qualified enough to label people Nazis, right? He's more qualified than any opponent on the left or on the far left. He is Sargon of Akkad. He is the enlightened, big-brained individual. And I noticed that Sargon tries to say, when Anglin says, oh, you only come in here to try and get me to say that I want to kill a bunch of people. And Sargon instantly goes, but you have said that. As though that's actually true. But this is Sargon trying to frame the aftermath of the debate. This is Sargon trying to frame his victory. I have to call you a murderer, a hypothetical murderer now in order to win whatever this is.
And I hope you agree that it sort of harks back to what I said earlier, and that he's sort of set up the debate by framing it as, well, first of all, not a debate, just an honest conversation, right? The connotation of honest needs to be in there, because thereafter he said, Anglin, you're honest, so I hope you'll be honest with me. And then they have a very long conversation about this and that, and Anglin constantly has to prove that he is not a genocidal neo-Nazi Hollywood caricature of a skinhead. And when he does so, instead of Sargon just accepting that as, face value, frankly, just taking Anglin's words, which is, I mean, you wanted an honest debate, didn't you, Sargon? Why would you doubt him? Because of a few, very hyperbolic articles on the Daily Stormer? Fair enough. But ultimately, he then says, well, Anglin, if you're not a Hollywood caricature of a skinhead, you're dishonest. And I'm so disappointed in you, Anglin. Oh, if only you were just so honest with me that you said that you wanted to genocide all of these people and, insert racial policy and segregation and make Hitler look like Barack Obama in comparison. Oh, Anglin, I'm so disappointed in it. I thought you were more honest. I thought you were more principled. You're such a pussy. You're such a cuckold. This and that's blowharting. It is extremely disingenuous and extremely tiring as well to listen to, but he keeps doing it time and time again, right? This is, in fact, if you, the debate itself is 5 hours, but Sargon is only there for the first 3 or so, I believe. He does this at least a dozen times, right? Where he suddenly sort of throws up his hands, and you can practically hear, his palms hit his lap as he sort of, Anglin, I thought you could be honest with me. What happened? And finally, I think it's really telling that he says, because Anglin does characterize it correctly. He says that Nazi today, much like racist, is more just a pejorative than it is an actual descriptor of a person's beliefs at this point in time, right? In the current culture. Nazi is a slur, right? But primarily aimed at, well, frankly, exclusively for white people, right? Sort of showing any sign of white identity or indeed white agency that is not sort of swayed towards a leftist bias, right? And when he points this out, Sargon says, no, you are a Nazi, because unlike the left, who call people Nazis because they don't know who they're talking to and they don't know anything about Nazis, you share a lot of things with the Nazis. You share their policy, which is, I think, the highest irony here, because Sargon has already proven, both in his attacks and also in the Atlanta article about Anglin, the later quotes, that he also does not understand the person he's talking to. He doesn't know Anglin at all as a person.
I just want to chip in and say, when Sargon says that he's disappointed in Anglin, I want to go back and point out that Sargon started this by saying that he deems Anglin the only person on the alt-right worth talking to because he's honest and he respects him. How can you show respect to someone when that respect only extends to you treating them like a child who has to keep gaining your approval? Sargon is desperately trying to present himself as a enlightened, older, matured parent figure, and Anglin and his opinions as some sort of outlandish, childish viewpoint. It's dishonest.
Right.
Sure.
I consider Andrew to have a much higher standing than Richard Spencer. Andrew actually has grassroots support. He actually has a base. He's built a platform and actually managed to make himself the target of literally every fucking person in the world. He's actually got supporters. He gets money from them. They believe in what he's doing, or at least I guess they believe in what you're pretending to be doing. But the point is, the point is, Richard Spencer, as far as I can tell, is like the Hillary Clinton of the alt-right. He's the sort of person who, I mean, who here would actually willingly go and talk to the mainstream media?
Richard Spencer.
Exactly. Why would he do that?
I don't know why he does that.
Exactly.
Nobody knows.
It's weird. It's like he's whoring himself out to them or something. Like this week I received an invite from a Dutch documentary team and the BBC to appear on their shows, and I haven't accepted, obviously, because I don't trust them, and I don't need to trust them. But Richard Spencer does. He would snap that up in a heartbeat, and now they've stopped talking to him. He's come to the YouTubers. This is what I mean. He's not high on my list of priorities. And ethno-states in space, is there anyone here who thinks that Richard Spencer's plan's ever going to come to fruition?
Not me.
So this is Sargon's probably only victory during this debate. And it's built upon this foundation of him flattering Anglin up to such a point where you actively cringe. Sargon's saying, "Oh, you're the only person. You're such a victim. You're the only one who truly is authentically alt-right." That's what Sargon's saying here. He's saying that everyone else's views are to be discounted because they're not Anglin. And Anglin's falling for this because then he's not attacking any position. Sargon's not going to attack any of Anglin's positions now. He's simply going to try and deflect onto Richard Spencer. He's trying to get them to agree with his opinion on Richard Spencer, and it works. It's his only victory during this debate. They all agree that Richard Spencer is a bit out there with his ethno-states and space.
Actually, I'll sort of have to disagree with you there slightly, in the sense that it may well be, to have people on, frankly, any side of political debates, even within the alt-right itself, agree that Richard Spencer may not be the most tactful of individuals, particularly regarding the media, is as low as a barrier as you can make it, essentially, right? I mean, it's something that you won't find a lot of pushback on, at least as far as I've seen. So while it may well be a victory, it is a bit of a truism. To be fair, right? It is a bit of a just a self-evident sort of nonsense statement. It doesn't really accomplish much. Again, well, besides from sort of framing the debate towards Spencer, but he isn't here right now. We can't defend his points. If anything, it sort of does make him look just a little bit more underhanded, but maybe that's just me. Primarily, though, he once again mischaracterizes Richard Spencer's arguments, of course, which Anglin later on does confront him for, because Richard Spencer is not for ethno-states in space. He, I believe, went off a line of inquiry that if an ethno-state happens and white people get back to considering themselves, the number ones in the world.
It's the flattering. It's Sargon's initial flattering of Anglin that lets them all agree on Sargon's straw man,
Yes, but even then, he does call him out on the details of the straw man, but he does agree with the premise. But my friend, what I'm trying to put across is that sort of agreeing that Spencer may not be the brightest, shovel in the shed, to sort of throw a saying out there, it's like saying that there's 4 seasons. It's quite an innocuous statement. I don't even think Spencer would maybe disagree with that one there, but who knows?
Well, what validity do we give the premise that Sargon presents, where he says that a Dutch documentary team from the BBC wanted to do a documentary on him?
Yes.
In fact, are there Dutch documentary teams in the BBC? I've not heard of these.
Well, that's certainly an interesting question, which I actually wanted to touch on, believe it or not, my friends, because as you are, of course, a Brit, can you perhaps tell us how Sargon of Akkad, or Carl Benjamin of Swindon, is often referred to, or let's say treated in the media? Because he says that he doesn't accept the office because he thinks, he implies that it's the mainstream media, the legacy media. They're going to mischaracterize him and they're going to do all this and that. But perhaps, maybe, it could be something else. Perhaps it could be that the media may not treat him as seriously and will not allow him to act as condescendingly as the internet does. What do you think?
Well, any sort of mention I've seen of Sargon in the mainstream media, either on the BBC or Question Time or anything like that, has been through the mouth of one member of parliament called Jess Phillips. She's like a feminist. She's the woman that Sargon tweeted at saying, "I wouldn't even rape you." And that's how Sargon is known. Sargon is known as Carl from Swindon, a troll that harassed an MP. That's his optics in England at the moment. And any documentary about Sargon of Akkad, certainly by a British broadcasting company or corporation, would lead with, "This is the man who tweeted, 'I wouldn't even rape you,' to Jess Phillips MP." He's optically, in Britain, there's no difference between him and an American history ex-Nazi.
And do you think that may really, in the end, be the true crux of why he won't talk to the mainstream media?
I don't even believe the validity of the claim that there's a documentary crew wanting to make a documentary about Sargon of Akkad. Least of all because he says it's a Dutch documentary crew working for the BBC. I don't believe that for a second.
Well, actually, to sort of correct you, this information that came out recently, but there has been a Dutch documentary guy, although he works for a Dutch news organization. So maybe Sargon purposely or accidentally conflated these things, or perhaps it's 2 different Dutch documentary teams. Maybe they're expanding the business. I'm not sure, but they have been asking around on Reddit, Twitter, 4chan, 8chan. Even some of my friends have had private correspondences with these teams. So maybe there is some validity to what he's saying, but I do think indeed that the particular statement of a Dutch documentary team from the BBC asking for him particularly, well, let's say it probably won't align entirely with reality on a 1-to-1 scale.
Seriously, tell me what your influence is.
Well, I just said we're influencing the culture. These memes are popular. Okay, but people are following our media, and these are spreading throughout the culture. White people are waking up and developing a consciousness, a racial consciousness, and a belief that they have a right to exist as a people. That is the goal, is to put a consciousness in the minds of the collective white population in all of our countries that are being invaded. I mean, they already have this in Eastern Europe, but in the countries that are being invaded, we want to create a consciousness of being white so that people will begin to organize and act in their own interests. And that is happening. We are affecting the way that masses of people are thinking, and everything is.
So Anglin's making the case that the alt-right has overtaken people like Sargon and these gamergators and these skeptics. It's much bigger than them, and it's rapidly rising. And Sargon's trying to dismiss this. Sargon doesn't want to address, the fact that certain things, certain elements that he's involved in, he's not the figurehead of, he's not the leader of. That Sargon-Spencer debate was famous for all the wrong reasons in Sargon's mind. You know, he didn't come out of that looking great, and he's inspired almost a lot of his audience, or a lot of his former audience, to shift over to the alt-right because they've looked at his incompetent behavior over these past few weeks and months. This is what happens when you gatekeep. This is what happens when you smugly try and discredit your opponents in such a disingenuous way as Sargon does, both in this stream and the stream he did with Spencer. And Anglin is trying to say that there's now a massive culture blossoming and coming into its fruition, right? That Sargon is excluded from. He's not a part of this. He's a relic. He's a dinosaur. He doesn't get it.
Indeed, that really is the crux here. Sargon doesn't get it. He is a gatekeeper, and in order to sort of disenfranchise the alt-right and to delegitimize them, he pretends that, and indeed argues on further later into the interview for quite a bit, in fact, to the point where even V joins him, in due time. He tries to frame the narrative that the alt-right has no influence upon politics, not even just on the internet, but just even in real life. You know, aside from the fact that internet blood sports got popularized by the very infamous now Spencer Sargon debates. It was really the sort of like the first ground zero for this phenomena. Despite the fact that presidential candidate Hillary Clinton has mentioned the alt-right numerous times by name, despite the fact that platforming them, even on a YouTube channel over a few thousand or so subs, will get you reported on the hate list of the SPLC, right, one of the largest Jewish lobby groups in America. Aside the fact that the entire Charlottesville affair, right, with, of course, a purported death and subsequent court cases and so on and so forth, all these things are intrinsically related to the alt-right, be they the victims, the perpetrators, or just the accidental bystanders. To deny, or in fact even to argue that the alt-right has no influence upon politics, be it good or bad, regardless of your political view, is simply preposterous, right? It proves that you're blind. And I think with Sargon's case, it's not so much an instance of him being ignorant as it is an instance of him just being, again, deliberately disingenuous to try and frame a narrative. This is what he would wish to be true, rather than what is actually true. Because Sargon is the definition of a gatekeeper, as you've already sort of touched upon here. Let's consider Sargon real quick here. He is, when you sort of look at him from the alt-right perspective, you don't really find a lot to disagree on, at least ostensibly. Because Sargon, what is he? He is pro, stopping all immigration. He thinks that British values should reign supreme. He thinks that whites should literally try and outbreed every other race on Earth and spread the British Enlightenment values, just like the Empire did, at least in his world, I suppose. He is anti-SJW. Skeptical of big business, but yet very anti-communist, excuse me. He knows black people weren't the original humans, either in Cheddar or indeed out of Africa. He thinks it's all, hogwash, essentially. From the alt-right perspective, he has so many red-pilled opinions, but then at the same time refuses to acknowledge any realistic way to fix it, aside from, indeed, his secret plan being, let them integrate. The same plan that every, moderate leftist and every conservative politician in the entirety of the Western world has been trying since, the 50s at least. Just try and let them integrate, right? That's what Sargon said. Let them integrate, and if they don't like it, they'll leave.
People are just trolling the liberalist thing because they think it was cringy, not because of the.
That's great, but the SJWs are fucking your countries. You fucking
I know
idiot.
They are. I'm not alt-right.
Stop wasting your time with us. Go and do something to the SJWs if you actually give a shit.
What is his plan?
That question.
He gave Sargon gave the critique. The Anglin and the alt-right doesn't have a plan to defeat the SJWs. So Anglin said, what is your plan? What is your suggestion? If you're going to critique someone that they don't have a method to defeat this group, then sounds like you don't have anything to offer either.
Well, I'm happy for you to believe that I don't have anything. I'm happy for you to believe that.
If you want actual change to happen, then you would tell us, you would tell your audience.
No, I think actual change is going to exclude the
So how are you going to tell anybody the secret plan? You're just going to carry it out with your group of YouTube scientists just by yourself, and that's going to change everything?
Myself. I don't even need a group of YouTube scientists.
All right.
You're going to take down the entire system yourself?
Wow.
No.
In secret? That's amazing, and I wait for it.
That's not what I'm saying.
Are you planning something?
I'm not even mad, man. That's impressive.
Well, I mean, I'm not Madonna. I'm not going to blow up the White House or something. But no, it's just what I'm personally going to do, and I think it will have an improvement. And hopefully, it changes minds. Hopefully, inspires other people to start doing things of their own. You know, I mean, I'm not going to be in control of everything or anything. I would hate to have that kind of responsibility. I'd hate to have that kind of burden on my time. You know.
So when can we expect this? Can you give us a little teaser? You know.
No.
Can we watch a trailer? When is this coming out?
No, I'm not. I'm not going to share it with you because I was charitable to the alt-right. Do you understand?
If you're a victim here, I mean, I don't understand the relevance of that.
Speak to Richard Spencer, speak to Jared Taylor, speak to Millennial Woes. You know, I genuinely kind of miss Millennial Woes. I kind of miss talking to him because I enjoyed his conversation, even if I disagree with him ideologically. I kind of miss his company. It's really weird. Right? White culture.
Sargon's always talking about how he doesn't have time for this. He's literally playing Dungeons and Dragons with V.
If you think the alt-right is so wrong about their principles and ideas, then fucking man up and debate. How are you the leader? How are you the leader of the liberalists when you can't even debate? V, in my opinion, V should be the fucking leader because he has the balls.
I agree. Should we give him the crown?
Yes.
Yeah. Make him the leader.
Let's do it. Let's do this. V, you're the king of the liberalists. Good on you.
Woo!
So Sargon's plan here is what we've seen. It's to set up the liberalists. It's to make the liberalists this movement, this political force. And the fact that he's trying to hold these cards close to his chest, even though he's revealed his hand, he revealed his hand when he got butthurt after the Spencer debate. This whole exchange just seems like a child trying to snatch their ball away and say, we're not playing football anymore.
Well, yes, but no, actually, his plan is not the liberalists in a political movement. In fact, that would be a better thing. Now, his plan came out, I believe it was a stream he did 1 or 2 days later, which also GF was, John Francois was part in a little bit. He mentioned that he, maybe a little bit in jest, but then again, who knows? He essentially wanted to just let them integrate. That's it. Just let them integrate. And also inseminate as many non-white women as possible to the point where... basically neo-colonial times happen again, essentially. Soft colonial times. I'm not sure how you'd characterize it, but it's ridiculous, right? Just let them integrate. That's my secret plan. It illustrates quite deftly that he has no plan, does he?
I think the plan, like Sargon's own political opinions, change constantly. This plan is whatever Sargon's thinking of at that moment in time.
Well, that's fair enough, actually, because, yes, that makes sense.
And I think the plan, whatever plan that there has no consistency. Sargon doesn't see. I hope Sargon doesn't see himself as the next Prime Minister of England. I hope Sargon doesn't see himself as the only person capable of destroying social justice and these social justice warriors. I hope Sargon doesn't have that view of himself, because in the same token, he also says that he just wants to go back to his video games, that all of this is a lot. What gets me is how he's almost hurt when they start talking about how, I think in jest, but they start saying how V should be the leader of the liberalists, and Sargon goes, "Yes, make him their king." He's almost hurt that they've taken his little project and handed it over to someone else. Sargon's built this castle out of paper mache, and now it's being taken from him in order for V to paint, and he doesn't like that. And I think that's why his plan would have changed from this liberalist agenda nonsense to we must inseminate non-whites.
Surreal, really. One could write a play about this, and it could be a highly acclaimed work of theater. I'm convinced of this. The characters at play here are a dime a dozen in their contradictory qualities, their sexual deviancy, their proliferities, their just whimsical nature. I feel like I'm witnessing a Shakespearean experience, frankly, here, right? With the character analysis that we're doing and the little props and actors at play here, sort of dancing in tune to the rhythm of a great story in many ways.
And I think we'll end there. My friend, thank you very much.